There is a quiet kind of abandonment that hurts more than being left. It's when someone is still beside you, still sleeping next to you, still calling you their partner, yet you already feel disposable. Most men don't realize this is happening until it's too late. They think love slowly fades. They think relationships naturally become harder. They think sacrificing themselves is the price of commitment. That belief is wrong, and it's destroying them. What actually kills attraction isn't time. It isn't routine. It isn't stress. It's fear. Fear of loss. Fear of conflict. Fear of saying the wrong thing. There are words most men are terrified to say, not because they're cruel, but because they reveal the truth. And truth has consequences. These words don't start fights. They end games. Used at the right moment, they don't push a woman away. They expose whether respect ever existed in the first place. Most men will hear this and still choose silence, because silence feels safer than self-respect. If you've ever felt small in your own relationship, if you've ever apologized for things you didn't do, if you've ever stayed quiet just to keep the peace, stay with me. Before we begin, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. And if you value conversations that tell the truth without shouting, consider subscribing. I've watched this transformation happen more times than I can count. It never looks dramatic from the outside. There's no explosion, no clear moment where everything breaks. It happens quietly, slowly, almost politely. A man enters a relationship standing upright. He has his own rhythm, his own opinions, his own life. He doesn't ask for permission. He doesn't explain himself unnecessarily. He's calm because he knows who he is. In the beginning, she's drawn to that. She calls it confidence. She calls it strength. She says she feels safe around him. 6 months later, something shifts. It starts small, harmless, almost reasonable. Why do you need to see your friends so often? Do you really have to stay out that late? I just miss you. Is that so wrong? He adjusts. Not because he's weak, but because he wants peace. He tells himself this is what compromise looks like. He cancels a night out. He checks in more often. He reassures her. Nothing bad happens, so he learns the lesson. A year in the adjustment stack, he runs his plans by her first. He explains his tone. He apologizes preemptively, just in case. He doesn't notice when his voice gets softer, when his posture changes, when he starts choosing words carefully, like he's navigating a room filled with glass. 2 years pass. At this point, he's no longer making choices. He's managing reactions. He measures his days by her moods. He reads her silences like weather reports. And the most dangerous part, he thinks this is love. He believes intimacy requires self-erasure. He believes a good man absorbs tension so she doesn't have to. He believes strength means endurance. So when he feels tired, confused, or small, he doesn't question the dynamic. He questions himself. Maybe I'm not trying hard enough. Maybe this is just how relationships are. Maybe every man goes through this. That belief keeps him trapped. What he doesn't see is that every adjustment he makes is teaching her something. Not consciously, not maliciously, but biologically. He's teaching her that his boundaries move, that pressure works, that discomfort is something he will carry for her. And every time he does something in her changes, she tests him. Not because she wants to hurt him, but because her instincts need to know where he ends. She pushes, he bends. She threatens, he reassures. She withdraws, he chases. From his perspective, he's saving the relationship. From hers, attraction is bleeding out. Because deep down, she doesn't want a man she can reshape. She wants a man who remains solid under pressure. Someone whose center doesn't shift every time emotions rise. When he fails those tests, something subtle happens. Her respect erodes, her desire dulls, and a crown begins to form. You can see it in the way she speaks to him now. Shorter, sharper, in the way she interrupts him, in the way she decides instead of discusses. She walks like someone who owns the ground beneath her feet. And he shrinks, not all at once, inch by inch. He starts asking questions he never asked before. Is this okay? Are you mad? Did I do something wrong? Eventually, he doesn't even remember who he was before her. The version of himself that laughed louder, that disagreed without fear, that didn't need approval to breathe. The sickest part is that he believes this transformation makes him a better partner. It doesn't. It makes him invisible. Attraction doesn't die because of arguments. It dies because of compliance. Because nothing is less exciting than certainty born from control. She doesn't look at him the way she used to. Not with curiosity, not with hunger. She looks through him, like he's furniture, useful, familiar, replaceable. And here's the truth most men can't accept. Every time she tests him and he collapses, he's not preserving the relationship. He's killing it, slowly, quietly, one apology at a time. She didn't wake up wanting power over him. She inherited it from his fear of losing her. And once that power exists, it changes her. The crown grows heavier, the kingdom expands, and the servant becomes smaller. Until one day she's standing over a man she no longer respects, wondering why she feels bored, irritated, and strangely empty. And he's standing in front of a woman he's afraid of calling it love because the alternative is admitting he lost himself. This is the point where most men stay. Not because they're stupid, but because they're tired. Tired of conflict. Tired of being alone. Tired of starting over. So they accept the discomfort as normal. Like waiting in line for hours, telling themselves misery is just part of the process. They look at other couples and assume it's the same everywhere. That behind closed doors, every man is shrinking. Every woman is dissatisfied. Every relationship is a quiet negotiation of power. That assumption is wrong. Some men never lose themselves. Some men never bend the first time. Some men recognize the tests for what they are and respond differently. And because of that, they live in a completely different reality. Not louder, not angrier, just calmer, clearer, untouchable. The difference isn't luck, it's awareness. There is a concept most men sense, but never name. They feel it, but they don't understand it. And because they don't understand it, they keep failing it. I call it the test. A test is not an argument. It's not a complaint. It's not even a conscious decision. It's a moment where pressure is applied to see what holds. She tests him when she challenges his boundaries. She tests him when she questions his choices. She tests him when she creates emotional tension and watches how he responds. Not because she wants to dominate him, but because her instincts are asking a simple question. Is this man stable under stress? Most men answer that question the wrong way. They explain, they justify, they apologize. They think clarity will solve it. They think reassurance will calm it. They think compliance will end it. It does none of those things. Because a test is not about logic, it's about structure. And every time he bends, he teaches her something dangerous. He teaches her that resistance is temporary, that pressure works, that his limits are negotiable. So she tests again and again. Each test by itself seems small, almost harmless. But together, they do something devastating. They erode him. Like water wearing down stone, not through force, but repetition. He doesn't notice it happening. He just feels more tired, more cautious, less certain. This is what I call erosion of backbone. The man who once spoke without thinking now pauses before every sentence. The man who once chose freely now calculates outcomes. The man who once trusted himself now seeks permission. And with every successful test, something shifts in her. Not satisfaction, not happiness, power. You can see it in her body language. She interrupts him without hesitation. She corrects him in public. She decides things without consulting him. She starts wearing a crown, not a literal one, a psychological one, a crown built from his concessions. The larger that crown becomes, the smaller he feels standing next to her. And here's the part no one tells you. She doesn't enjoy this. She doesn't respect him more for surrendering. She doesn't feel safer because he's compliant. She doesn't feel loved because he absorbs everything. She feels bored, disappointed, and eventually disgusted. Because attraction is not built on obedience. It's built on polarity, on tension, on strength meeting strength. When she looks at him now, she doesn't see a man who chose her. She sees a man who needs her. And need is heavy. Need is unattractive. Need is suffocating. This is the paradox. She tests him to see if he's strong. But the testing itself weakens most men over time. And then she resents him for becoming weak. She hates that he fails. Even though she created the conditions for failure, she hates what he's become, even though she shaped him. This internal conflict creates constant tension. She feels irritated and doesn't know why. She starts picking fights over nothing. She withdraws affection, then blames him for feeling distant. From her perspective, something is wrong with him. From his perspective, nothing he does is enough. And instead of recognizing the pattern, he adapts again. He walks on eggshells. He learns her triggers. He studies her moods. He becomes an emotional manager instead of a partner. And he calls this maturity. But it isn't. It's survival behavior. You see the same thing happen in environments where people feel powerless. Long lines, bureaucratic systems, jobs with no control. At first, people complain. Then they adapt. Then they normalize the misery. This is just how it is. That's what happens here. Men get so used to constant testing, subtle manipulation, emotional volatility, that they assume it's normal. They believe every relationship works this way, that every man lives under the same pressure, that this discomfort is simply the price of intimacy. They're wrong. Some men never enter this cycle. Some men fail the first test deliberately, not by being aggressive, not by being cruel, but by refusing to move. They don't explain. They don't beg. They don't collapse. And because of that, the tests stop. Not immediately, but eventually. Because a test that doesn't produce results loses its purpose. This is the difference between a man who gets eroded and a man who remains intact. The intact man does not react emotionally to pressure. He does not fear disapproval. He does not negotiate his core. When she pushes, he doesn't resist loudly. He simply doesn't move. That response does something profound. It denies her the crown. Because power does not come from force. It comes from leverage. And leverage only exists when you care more about the outcome than the other person does. The moment he stops needing approval, the entire dynamic shifts. But most men never reach that point. They mistake endurance for strength. They mistake silence for wisdom. They mistake compliance for love. And so they continue shrinking, until one day they look at themselves and don't recognize the man in the mirror. They feel abandoned, not because she left, but because they left themselves first. This is the moment where a man either wakes up or disappears completely inside someone else's kingdom. There is a reason this pattern feels inescapable to so many men. It's not because women are malicious. It's not because relationships are broken. It's because most men misunderstand the nature of the test itself. They think a test is a problem to solve. It isn't. A test is pressure applied to reveal structure. And this is where the paradox begins. Women test men to find strength, but the very act of constant testing weakens most men over time, not all at once, gradually, like erosion. At first, the man resists. He holds his ground. He asserts himself. But resistance costs energy, and when the pressure never stops, he adapts instead. Adaptation feels smart. It feels mature. It feels loving. He tells himself, I'm choosing my battles. He tells himself, this isn't worth the argument. He tells himself, I don't want to hurt her. So he gives ground. And she learns. She learns where his limits are. She learns how far she can push. She learns which emotions control him. This learning is not conscious. It's instinctive. Like water finding the lowest point. Each successful test removes a little more of his backbone, until one day there's nothing left to test. At that point, something inside her shuts down. Because a man who offers no resistance offers no polarity. And without polarity, desire collapses. This is the cruel irony. She wanted reassurance. She wanted safety. She wanted consistency. And now she has it. Total predictability. And predictability is death to attraction. This is why so many men experience the same confusing shift. She used to want me. She used to chase me. She used to care. Now she's distant, irritable, cold. She doesn't know why. He doesn't know why. But the answer is simple. There is nothing left for her instincts to engage with. The crown is complete, and the kingdom is boring. You can see the resentment in small moments, the way she sighs when he speaks, the way she rolls her eyes, the way she treats his needs as inconveniences. She doesn't feel grateful for his sacrifices. She feels irritated by them, because deep down, sacrifices signal weakness, not generosity, not love, weakness. And weakness does something uncomfortable to her identity. She doesn't want to be with a man she can dominate. She wants to be with a man who could walk away. So when she realizes he won't, her respect begins to rot. Here's the part men never expect. She hates herself for this. She knows she's testing too much. She knows she's pushing him away. She knows she's becoming someone she doesn't like. But she can't stop. Because tests are not strategic decisions. They're biological impulses. She needs to know where the edge is. And if there is no edge, she keeps going. This is why emotional volatility often increases as a man becomes more compliant. Men think compliance will bring peace. It brings escalation. Because the system is now unbalanced, she has too much control, and power without resistance creates boredom, anxiety, and eventually contempt. This is the test paradox. She tests to feel safe. But safety created through dominance feels empty. What she actually needs is stability. And stability does not come from submission. It comes from immovability. This is why some men seem immune to these dynamics. They are not louder. They are not colder. They are not cruel. They are simply anchored. When pressure comes, they don't absorb it. They don't reflect it. They let it pass. They don't argue. They don't explain. They don't defend. They observe. And observation without reaction is devastating to a test. Because a test requires engagement. No engagement. No leverage. This is where most men fail. They believe silence is weakness. They believe not responding is losing. In reality, reaction is the loss. The moment he reacts emotionally, the test succeeds. The moment he defends himself, the test gains structure. The moment he begs, the test becomes permanent. So what happens when a man stops playing? At first, confusion. She pushes harder. She escalates emotionally. She increases the stakes. Because the old tools aren't working, this is where many men panic. They mistake escalation for danger instead of desperation. And they collapse right when holding steady would end the pattern. But the men who don't collapse see something different. They see the testing burn itself out. Because pressure without response has nowhere to go. Eventually, she stops pushing. Not because she's defeated, but because her nervous system calms down. There was a psychological study conducted in Stockholm that observed couples during conflict. What they found was counterintuitive. When men remained emotionally stable during female emotional outbursts, women's stress hormones decreased faster than when men tried to comfort or appease them. Her biology calmed down in the presence of stability. Not sympathy, not compliance. Stability. This explains something most men misunderstand. She doesn't want you to fix her emotions. She wants you to survive them. She doesn't want reassurance. She wants grounding, and grounding cannot come from someone who is shaken. This is why the test paradox exists. She tests to find strength. Most men respond by weakening themselves, and then everyone loses. The relationship doesn't become loving. It becomes tense. It becomes fragile. It becomes performative. Until both people feel trapped in a dynamic they don't understand. The way out is not aggression, it's clarity. Clarity about who you are. Clarity about where you stand. Clarity about what you will not move for. Without that, the tests never stop. And without tests stopping, the erosion never ends. There is a belief so deeply embedded in female identity that touching it feels almost forbidden. Most men sense it, but they never say it out loud. Every woman believes she is different. Not better in an obvious way, not superior in a measurable way. Just exempt. Exempt from patterns. Exempt from comparison. Exempt from being ordinary. She may say she's not like other women. She may say she hates drama. She may say she values honesty and depth. And she believes it. This belief is not arrogance. It's structure. It's how she understands her place in the world. So when a man reinforces that belief, when he treats her as rare and irreplaceable, attraction rises. But when he removes that exemption, something breaks. This is the first phrase most men are terrified to use. Not because it's cruel, but because it's final. You don't shout it. You don't weaponize it. You don't say it in anger. You state it calmly. When we met, I thought you were different. I thought you were special. But you're not. You're just like the others. Same insecurities, same games, same drama. No raised voice, no bitterness, no threat. Just observation. The tone matters more than the words. Because what devastates her is not the insult. It's the loss of uniqueness. In that moment, you're not rejecting her. You're removing her from the pedestal. And that shatters the crown. Every woman believes she's the exception to the rule. The one who breaks the pattern. The one who changes the story. When you casually place her back into the pattern, her identity trembles. I saw this play out once outside a restaurant. A couple stood arguing on the sidewalk. She was animated, emotional, certain. "You don't appreciate how unique I am," she said. You don't see how special I am compared to other women." The man didn't raise his voice. He didn't defend himself. He looked at her and said, "Everything you're doing right now is exactly what my ex did. Word for word. It's like you all read from the same script." She didn't argue back. She went silent. Not the kind of silence used as punishment. The kind of silence that comes from cognitive collapse. Her brain was searching for a response and finding none. Because for the first time, someone had held up a mirror and shown her something she couldn't rationalize away. She wasn't the protagonist. She was repeating a role. And once that realization enters the room, nothing is the same. This is why this phrase cuts so deeply. Most criticisms can be reframed. Most insults can be dismissed. Most attacks can be reversed. But ordinariness sticks. It attacks the foundation, not the surface. Deep down, every woman fears she might be replaceable. Not just emotionally, existentially. So when you state it as fact, without cruelty, without malice, without urgency, you trigger something primal. The crown cracks. And here's what men misunderstand. This is not an attack. It's a response. You don't say this in a healthy relationship. You don't say this to win an argument. You don't say this to hurt. You say it when manipulation has become the norm, when tests have become constant, when control has replaced connection. This phrase is an antibiotic. You don't take antibiotics when you're healthy. You take them when the infection is spreading. And like all antibiotics, misuse can cause damage. But when used correctly, it stops the disease. The disease is not her behavior. The disease is the dynamic. A dynamic where she sees herself as irreplaceable and you see yourself as disposable. This phrase resets that equation. It tells her without hostility that she is not above comparison, that she is not beyond replacement, that she is not immune to consequences. And that information forces a recalibration. Some women react with anger, some with denial, some with withdrawal. But all of them feel it. Because it removes leverage. She can no longer threaten you with her uniqueness. She can no longer position herself as the only source of value. The crown loses weight. Now here is the critical part most men miss. You cannot say this while still needing her. If your tone carries fear, it fails. If your body language seeks approval, it backfires. If your voice trembles, it exposes the lie. This phrase only works when it's true. When you genuinely see her as one of many. When you genuinely know you'll be fine without her. That's why most men never use it. Not because they don't know the words, but because they don't believe them. They've built their entire sense of worth around her perception. So the idea of her being ordinary feels like self-destruction. In reality, it's liberation. Because the moment she stops being special by default, she has to earn her place. Respect returns, effort returns, balance returns, or she leaves. And if she leaves, the relationship was already dead. This phrase doesn't destroy love. It reveals whether love ever existed without fear holding it together. And that revelation, while uncomfortable, is the beginning of clarity. The second moment that dismantles the crown is quieter than the first. There is no confrontation, no dramatic speech, just absence of fear. Most women never expect it, because nearly every threat they make rests on one assumption that you are afraid to lose them. I might leave. I need space. My ex texted me, maybe we should take a break. These statements are not decisions. They are probes. They are designed to measure how tightly you're holding on. And most men fail instantly. They argue, they plead, they reassure. They promise change. They think they're showing love. What they're actually showing is dependence. So here is the second response most men are terrified to give. Indifference to her leaving. Not bitterness, not anger, not passive aggression. Indifference. She says she might walk out. You hold the door. She says she needs space. You say, take all the time you need. I already have plans. She mentions another man. You nod. Maybe you two can figure things out. No sarcasm, no jealousy, no reaction. This response collapses her entire framework because her power was never in leaving. Her power was in your fear of it. The moment that fear disappears, the leverage vanishes with it. I've seen this play out countless times. A woman says, I think we should see other people. What she expects is resistance, begging, proof of devotion. What she wants is confirmation that she matters more than anyone else. Instead, the man says, I think that's a great idea. I've actually been wanting to ask someone out. This makes it easier. The effect is immediate. Her confidence fractures. She backtracks. She explains. She softens. I didn't mean it like that. I was just testing to see if you cared. That sentence tells you everything. The threat was never about leaving. It was about control. And when control fails, panic sets in. Because now she's no longer sure where she stands. Indifference is not cruelty. It is clarity. It says, I am not trapped. It says, I choose you, but I don't need you. It says, my life does not collapse without your presence. That message is devastating to the crown. This is why holding the door open is more powerful than slamming it shut. Anger still signals attachment. Jealousy still signals fear. Indifference signals freedom. It tells her she is optional. And optional is terrifying to someone who built their identity on being essential. Here's the part men struggle with. They think indifference means pretending. It doesn't. You cannot fake this. If your chest tightens when she threatens to leave, she will feel it. If your voice wavers, she will hear it. If your mind races, she will sense it. This only works when you've already accepted the outcome. Loss doesn't scare a man who knows he can rebuild. Most men never reach that place because they've invested everything into the relationship. Their friends faded. Their hobbies disappeared. Their sense of self narrowed. So losing her feels like losing everything. Which is why the threat works. Indifference requires something deeper, a life, a center, a sense of identity that exists independently of her validation. When that exists, her leaving is not catastrophic, it's inconvenient. And that shift is impossible to ignore. Here's another truth. When you show indifference to her leaving, you're not pushing her away. You're giving her a choice. For the first time, she has to decide whether she wants to stay without leverage, without threats, without tests, without manipulation. And many women have never faced that choice because most men never force it. They chase, they negotiate, they surrender, so she never has to choose freely. Indifference removes the cage. And when the cage is gone, two things happen. Either she leaves, or she stays and changes. If she leaves, the relationship was already built on fear. If she stays, respect has a chance to return. This is why indifference is not a tactic. It's a filter. It separates attachment from desire. A woman who only stays when you're afraid is not staying for you. She's staying for power. A woman who stays when you are indifferent is staying by choice. And choice is the only foundation attraction can stand on. There is another layer most men miss. When you show indifference to her leaving, you also show indifference to her approval. You're no longer negotiating your behavior. You're no longer modifying yourself to keep peace. You are simply being. That alone is destabilizing, because now she has nothing to push against. No emotional hooks, no reactive patterns. Just stillness. Stillness exposes everything. It reveals whether her interest was genuine or conditional. It reveals whether the relationship had substance or just tension. And tension without fear collapses. Most men confuse this with emotional coldness. It's not coldness, it's composure. Coldness is resentment, composure is acceptance. You don't punish her for threatening to leave. You don't lecture her. You don't dramatize it. You accept it as an option. And acceptance is power. This is why indifference feels unfair to someone used to control. It removes the game without announcing the rules changed. And suddenly she's playing chess while you're not even at the table. Here's the final truth of this part. The moment you stop fearing her departure, you reclaim yourself. You stop living in reaction. You stop shrinking. You stop managing emotions that aren't yours. And whether she stays or leaves, you win. Because the crown cannot survive in the presence of a man who is already whole. There is one illusion almost every woman carries, whether she admits it or not. It's the belief that her sexuality is her ultimate leverage. Not just attraction, power. She may not frame it that way consciously, but deep down she knows this is the card that has saved her before. When emotions fail, when arguments stall, when control begins to slip, sex becomes the unspoken ace, the thing that makes her irreplaceable. Most men reinforce this belief without realizing it. They tolerate disrespect because the intimacy is good. They stay quiet because they don't want to lose access. They forgive things they shouldn't because the physical connection feels like proof of value. And in doing so, they place her sexuality on a pedestal. That pedestal becomes another piece of the crown. This is why the third response is the most psychologically destabilizing of all. Not because it's loud, not because it's aggressive, but because it removes her final certainty. You don't say it during an argument. You don't say it to wound. You don't say it with heat. You say it the same way you'd comment on the weather. Honestly, the physical side of our relationship has always been just, okay. I've experienced deeper passion before. That's fine. Not everyone is exceptional in that area. Then you move on. No pause, no explanation, no follow-up. This moment lands like a delayed explosion. She won't react immediately. She won't scream. She won't argue. She'll go quiet. Because you didn't attack her body. You attacked the belief that her body gives her power over you. Every woman, regardless of confidence, carries a private fear that she might be ordinary in bed. Not bad, not unattractive, just replaceable. So when you state this calmly, without judgment, without emotion, you take away the one weapon she believed was untouchable. You don't degrade her, you normalize her. And normalization is devastating to an inflated self-image. Most insults can be dismissed as bitterness. This cannot. Because there is no bitterness in your voice. Only indifference. You didn't say she was terrible. You said she was average. And average doesn't inspire fear. It inspires reality. Here's what makes this different from everything else. She cannot rationalize it away. If you call her controlling, she can deny it. If you call her manipulative, she can reframe it. If you call her disrespectful, she can cry. But if you say her sexuality isn't special, there is no counterattack. Because sexuality lives in identity, not logic. And identity, once shaken, takes time to rebuild. This is why this response should never be used casually. It's not a jab. It's a boundary. You use it only when sex has been used as leverage, when affection has been withheld to control, when intimacy has become transactional. This response ends that transaction. It says, "This is not currency." It says, "You do not control me through desire." It says, "My worth is not dependent on access to your body." And the moment she realizes that the power dynamic collapses, the crown loses its final jewel. Now here's the mistake most men make. They think these responses are attacks. They are not. They are reactions. You don't deploy them in healthy dynamics. You don't use them to gain advantage. You don't collect them like weapons. They are antibiotics. You don't take antibiotics when you feel fine. You take them when the infection is spreading. Manipulation is the infection. Threats are the infection. Emotional terrorism is the infection. And just like medicine dosage matters, use it too early, you damage the system. Use it too late, the system is already failing. But used at the right moment, it stops the decay. There is another reason this works. Sexual leverage only functions when a man believes he has no alternatives. The moment you imply that intimacy exists beyond her, that you've known deeper connections, her exclusivity dissolves. You're no longer starving. And hunger is what made you controllable. This doesn't make her chase immediately. It makes her recalibrate. She starts paying attention to her own effort. She becomes aware of her complacency. She feels exposed. Because now she knows she cannot rely on that one advantage. She has to show up as a whole person, or she leaves. And again, that outcome is clarity. A woman who only offers sexuality in exchange for obedience is not offering intimacy. She's offering control. This response removes that illusion. And here's the hardest truth. Most men cannot say this because they don't believe it. They've convinced themselves the sex is irreplaceable, that no one else would want them, that this is as good as it gets. So the fear remains, and fear keeps the crown intact. But when a man truly understands his own value, this response becomes natural, not cruel, not calculated, just honest. And honesty delivered without emotion is one of the most destabilizing forces in any unhealthy dynamic. At this point, 3 pillars of leverage have been removed. Her uniqueness, her threat of leaving, her sexual power. What remains is nothing but reality, and reality cannot be manipulated. Once those illusions are gone, something interesting happens. Her attacks become sharper, more direct, more emotional. This is where most men collapse again, because now the words are designed to cut. You're not a real man. The spark is gone. Maybe I should find someone who actually appreciates me. I don't feel safe with you anymore. To an untrained ear, these sound like conclusions. They're not. They are tests disguised as statements. They are meant to force defense, to trigger reassurance, to pull emotion out of you. And most men respond exactly as expected. No, baby, that's not true. I do appreciate you. I'll change. Please don't give up on us. This response feels loving. It is not. It confirms the frame she created. The frame where she judges and you plead. Where she attacks and you explain. Where she holds power and you react. There is a method that collapses this frame completely. I call it the agreement method. When she attacks, you agree. Not sarcastically, not mockingly, calmly. She says, maybe I should find someone who appreciates me. You say you're probably right. You deserve someone who makes you happy, and that clearly isn't me. I'll help you pack. She says, you're not a real man. You say you're right. A real man wouldn't tolerate this behavior. Thanks for pointing that out. She says the spark is gone. You say, I've felt that too. We should probably end this before we waste more of each other's time. No anger, no urgency, no fear, just agreement. This response does something devastating. It removes opposition. Her attack was designed to meet resistance. When there is none, it collapses inward. It's like throwing a punch and hitting air. She stumbles, because now she has to confront the possibility that her words might actually lead to loss. Not theatrically, not dramatically, but cleanly. And that terrifies her, because these statements were never meant to be taken literally. They were meant to extract emotion. When you agree, you expose that fact. This is why so many women backtrack immediately after hearing this. I didn't mean it like that. I was just emotional. I was testing to see if you cared. Again, the truth slips out. It was a test. The agreement method breaks tests because it denies the reward. No defense, no reassurance, no collapse, just consequences. There was a video that circulated online for a while. A woman was berating her partner in public, calling him weak, calling him pathetic, telling him he wasn't the man she thought he was. Most men would argue, most men would explode, most men would shrink. This man nodded. "You're right," he said. "I am pathetic for putting up with this. That changes today." Then he walked away, left her standing there. The comment section was chaos. Some women were furious, some men were stunned, but nearly everyone felt it. Because that moment showed what happens when a man stops defending himself. Agreement doesn't escalate conflict, it ends it. Now let's talk about the mirror method. This one is simpler, but just as effective. Whatever energy she brings you, reflect it. She's cold, you're colder. She's distant, you're more distant. She's disrespectful, you're dismissive. She threatens to leave. You've already left emotionally. This is not revenge, it's calibration. You are showing her that you will not overinvest where she underinvests. You are matching reality. Most men do the opposite. They chase when she withdraws. They soften when she hardens. They give more when they receive less. That imbalance feeds the crown. The mirror method starves it, because now her behavior has consequences, not punishment. Reflection. She sees herself through you, and that reflection is uncomfortable. This is especially powerful because women have a remarkable ability to rewrite history. Suddenly, everything you've done never happened. Every sacrifice is forgotten. Every compromise erased. But the one time you said no, that becomes the defining moment of the relationship. This is why defending your past is useless. She's not arguing facts. She's expressing feelings. And feelings don't respond to logic. The mirror method avoids that trap. You don't debate reality. You respond to behavior. Cold gets cold. Distance gets distance. Disrespect gets disengagement. And here's the part men misunderstand. This is not about winning. It's about ending distortion. You are no longer trying to prove your worth. You are no longer trying to be understood. You are simply showing what exists. If the relationship is warm, you're warm. If it's cold, you don't pretend otherwise. That honesty destabilizes manipulation, because manipulation relies on denial. It requires you to believe things are better than they are. It requires you to doubt your perception. It requires you to carry emotional weight that isn't yours. The agreement method and the mirror method remove that burden. You stop carrying her emotions. You stop correcting her reality. You stop explaining yourself. And something unexpected happens. She starts working. She starts adjusting her tone. She starts choosing her words more carefully. She starts paying attention. Why? Because for the first time, she's not sure she has you. For the first time, there is risk, and risk is what creates respect. This doesn't always save the relationship. Sometimes it ends it. But it always ends the illusion, and that is the real victory. Because living inside an illusion is worse than being alone. When you master these methods, you stop reacting to tests. You see them for what they are. Signals. Signals of insecurity. Signals of imbalance. Signals of a crown that has grown too large. And instead of fighting the crown, you remove the ground beneath it. Silently. Calmly. Without apology. There is a moment that shatters the crown more completely than any word ever could. It's not what you say. It's what happens when you stop chasing. And your life improves. Most women expect one thing when they leave, or threaten to leave. Collapse. They expect regret. They expect late-night texts. They expect emotional speeches and long explanations. They expect to remain the center of your world, even in absence. So when none of that happens, something inside them breaks. Not emotionally, existentially. You don't call, you don't beg, you don't post sad quotes or indirect messages. You live, and not in a performative way, in a real way. You reconnect with the parts of yourself that disappeared. You see friends she didn't like. You pursue interests she called childish. You build routines that don't revolve around her moods. Your life expands. She expected her absence to punish you. Instead, it frees you. That realization creates panic. Because she thought she was the sun in your solar system. And now she sees she was just clouds blocking your light. This is where the pattern becomes almost scientific. I've seen it repeat so many times, it's hard to call it coincidence. First, the dramatic exit. She leaves expecting pursuit, then silence. Not punishment, silence. Not strategic silence, just absence. You don't reach out because you don't need to. Days pass, then weeks. She checks your social media. She sees photos of you smiling. Not forced smile, real ones. She sees you doing things you stopped doing for her. Something tightens in her chest. This is not jealousy. It's disorientation. Because her self-worth was built on being essential to your happiness, and you've just disproven that. So she creates a reason to return, an emergency, a forgotten item, a conversation we never finished. She texts. You don't respond immediately. Not because you're playing games, because you're busy. She texts again. Then she shows up, not to get her things, to see if she still matters. You're polite, you're calm, you're distant. You don't reopen wounds. You don't revisit old arguments. You don't ask her to stay. And that's when it hits her. She's no longer the prize. She's the one trying to regain relevance. This is what psychologists call an existential crisis. Not the dramatic kind, the quiet kind. The kind where someone realizes the story they told themselves is no longer true. She believed she was necessary. She believed she was irreplaceable. She believed she had power. And now she doesn't know who she is without that role. This is why women often say, "You changed." You didn't. You returned to yourself. And that return is threatening to someone who benefited from your absence. Here's the part most men don't understand. This has nothing to do with revenge. It has everything to do with truth. When you thrive without her, you're not punishing her. You're revealing reality. Reality is that your happiness was suppressed, not enhanced. Reality is that the relationship required your shrinkage. Reality is that her presence was not a gift. It was a limitation. That realization is devastating to someone who built their identity on control, because now she has to face a question she's avoided. If I wasn't making him happier, what was I doing? That question leads to shame. Shame leads to reflection. Reflection leads to change or avoidance. Either way, the crown cannot survive. This is also why men who genuinely move on often experience a sudden resurgence of interest. She reappears when it's too late. She's warmer, more attentive, more affectionate. Not because she suddenly changed, but because she now feels the risk. And risk activates desire. But here's the truth most men miss. If you're doing this to get her back, it fails. If you're posting photos to provoke her, she feels it. If your happiness is conditional on her reaction, you're still trapped. This only works when you are actually free, when you are happier without her drama, when you genuinely prefer peace to tension, when your life no longer revolves around her approval. At that point, her reaction becomes irrelevant. And irrelevance is the ultimate loss of power. This is why indifference is more frightening than anger. Anger means she still matters. Indifference means she doesn't. And when she realizes that the crown disappears entirely. Now let's talk about biology. You might think this is manipulation. It's not. It's instinct. Women are not sitting around plotting these dynamics. They are responding to signals the same way you respond to physical cues, like a cat chasing a toy. The moment the toy stops moving, interest fades. The moment it moves away, attention spikes. It's not conscious cruelty, it's wiring. This is why getting angry at women for this is pointless. It's like getting angry at gravity. The mistake is stepping off the edge and blaming the fall. The smarter move is understanding the terrain. When you understand this, something shifts. You stop taking behavior personally. You stop moralizing instincts. You stop resenting tests. You see them as information. Information about balance. Information about boundaries. Information about respect. And once you see them clearly, you can choose differently. You can choose not to chase. You can choose not to collapse. You can choose not to shrink. And that choice changes everything. Because the most powerful position in any relationship is not loving more or less. It's needing less. When you need less, you fear less. And when you fear less, you are free. Before you leave, I want to slow this down and make it human. The real lesson here isn't about control tactics or saying the right words at the right time. It's about where you place your sense of worth. Most people spend their lives negotiating with the world for permission to feel enough. They trade pieces of themselves for approval. They tolerate discomfort to avoid loss. They confuse endurance with love. And slowly, without noticing, they disappear from their own lives. The moment everything changes is not when someone treats you better. It's when you stop abandoning yourself to be chosen. When you stop asking, how do I keep them, and start asking, is this costing me who I am? That shift is quiet, but it's powerful. Pressure fades. Fear loosens. You move differently, not with urgency, but with clarity. And here's the truth. Most people never tell you, when you are grounded in yourself, rejection doesn't destroy you. Indifference doesn't threaten you. Loss doesn't define you. Because you were never built to live as a supporting character in someone else's story. You were meant to be present in your own life, fully honestly, without shrinking. If any part of this resonated with you, I'd like to hear from you. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Sometimes just being seen matters, And if you value conversations that don't shout, don't sugarcoat, and don't lie, consider subscribing. We're not here to escape reality. We're here to face it calmly and clearly.